Hey everyone, welcome to the Neo Marketing Podcast. Today I have special guest, Kitt Letcher, President and CEO of the Better Business Bureau of Central Oklahoma.
Hi, how's it going?
Good to see you today, Kitt.
You too, thanks.
Welcome to the Golden Group Neo Marketing Podcast, a bi-weekly discussion of modern business communication. So let's talk about BBB, Central Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. How long have you been the head person, the head girl in charge of the BBB?
I actually just celebrated my 6-year anniversary in May of this year. So I started back in 2013.
What were you doing before becoming to the BBB?
I worked for United Way of Central Oklahoma in a couple of different roles, and I was there for about 8 years before I came to BBB.
This is not your first nonprofit job?
Nope, I've always worked in nonprofit. I had a very tiny amount of time that I worked in a banking industry. That was not really a good fit for me. So I came back to nonprofit, and it's been great ever since.
You want to do something completely different than that.
Mm-hmm.
Very
yes.
good. So when you came here 6 years ago, I'm sure it was very different than it is today. So what did you initially walk into, and what were the challenges that you took on from day one?
Yeah. The neat thing about BBB is we are a very old organization. We've been around for over 100 years. Our local BBB has been here since 1930. We have a great reputation in this community. But over the years, some things had started to change a little bit, and we really needed to regroup and re-energize what we were doing as an organization. And so for me, I love coming in and just breaking things apart, being able to look at the operations and how things are running, and then try to get the most out of that organization.
Right.
So while I came on board with BBB, I had just a very small staff, and we were doing very minimal recruitment of new businesses. And so we really changed how we talk to businesses, how we interact with businesses, the type of engagement that they should expect from us. So I kind of stayed under the radar for the first year as we regrouped and revamped what we did. And then from there, we had so much change that we were able to bring to the table that it was really neat to basically reintroduce ourselves to the Oklahoma City and Central Oklahoma community.
So as you were learning how to be the president and CEO of the BBB, you were also changing the organization and moving it into a more forward-looking format.
Right.
And that's kind of the pro and con, right, of being in an organization that's been known for 100 plus years, is people know the brand, but they also have their own expectation of it.
Right.
And now here it's 20 whatever it is, and you have to change that perception, right?
Yeah. Well, and what was interesting about whenever I came on board in 2013, we really needed to hone our focus and our core values as an organization and what we were really good at. So what people typically think about us for reviews, complaint process, ad reviews, investigations, we needed to get better at doing those core competencies. And so my team did an awesome job of pulling that together and just really moving that needle forward. And so then as we got all of that underfoot and really was able to focus in on it, we started looking at the entire business landscape of Oklahoma and saying, we aren't reaching our potential as an organization. And so what we should be doing for Oklahoma citizens and Oklahoma business leaders, we need to take that a step further. So that's where we are today. So we're really excited about how we've been able to change multiple times within our organization.
Plus, you also have to balance. You're a part of a national brand, international
brand.
An international brand. It's been around over 100 years, but you're the local affiliate. You're the connection to Oklahoma City. You're in Oklahoma City. You are Oklahoma City,
right?
Because you live here. You raise your family here. So how do you balance representing the national brand and then doing what's right for the Oklahoma City, Central Oklahoma market?
Yeah, I would say the really neat thing about BBB, because we are all very individual. There's over 100 BBBs across North America. So we cover Mexico, the United States, and Canada. And each BBB really gets to look at what our individual market needs. So for Oklahoma, we serve approximately 50 counties within the state of Oklahoma. And which
is a majority, 50 out of 77.
It is, right? Yeah. And so while we are based out of Oklahoma City, we do cover all the way up to Stillwater, a little bit further past that, up to Enid, and then going down to Lawton in the southern border of the state. So we have a wide range of communities that we're serving. And what we really looked at is, while the consumer focus and scams and things like that are important, we really feel like the preventative and helping businesses be better and helping businesses grow and to strive and to do more is where we want to focus our efforts, because that's what makes the most sense economically for Oklahoma. So that's the neat thing about being part of an international brand, is that we get the marketing materials to talk about things that people typically think of with BBB, but we have the leniency and the individuality to be able to focus on what do businesses in Oklahoma really need.
And in the 6 years that you've been here, your competitive landscape has changed as well, right? You have competitors today you didn't have then, and there'll probably be another one tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
So how is the introduction of some of this competition and obviously technology, communication-wise and marketing-wise changed your approach?
You know, it's an interesting question, because the competition for us really comes from a lot of different angles. It's not just like apps or other websites. It can also be other organizations within Oklahoma City or within other communities. So if they have a really good business development office or small business administrative office that are doing those same capacities
and
that
even
we're
county
trying
and
to
state
build.
too, right?
Absolutely. Those can be seen as competition. So what we've really tried to leverage is the collaboration with those organizations. So we're not in direct competition, but we're showing businesses how, utilizing all these different opportunities they have available to them, how do they then take those different sets of individuals and organizations who want them to succeed, put them all together, and then use them for what they really need.
Right. And trying to make collaborations instead of
Absolutely.
competing with each other, right?
Right. Because I don't want somebody to use our office instead of the Small Business Administration. I want them to use both of us and realize that we are a cohesive team and we should be helping further business for Oklahoma.
That makes perfect sense. What is the single most common misperception about BBB?
There's probably a couple. I would say two things that we hear most often. Consumers will call and say, I'm mad that you didn't shut this business down. I pay my taxes and you should be taking care of them. And we are not a government entity. So we are a nonprofit organization.
Taxes have nothing to do with it.
It does not. We're proud of you for paying your taxes. Because
nor do you have the power to shut any business
we don't. No. Our job is about education and awareness. So that's probably one of our biggest misconceptions that are out there. The other thing that we hear often is people will say, well, I don't want to be a part of BBB because then I'll get complaints. And if I'm an accredited business, then people can start complaining about me. And that has nothing to do with it. Our businesses that are accredited really have gone a step above and beyond just a regular business, because they're saying these are our 8 standards of trust that we agree to abide by. This is the framework of integrity and values that we are bringing to the Oklahoma landscape. And this is how we're saying that we conduct ourselves.
And they initiated that process.
Absolutely. Yes. And so a lot of times what we see with businesses who don't think very highly of BBB or what we do for consumers or what we do for businesses is because maybe they've had a bad interaction. They had a complaint they didn't feel like they needed to actually respond to. And that can be, helped in a variety of different ways. But really what it gets down to is, if you take the time to figure out how BBB can best serve your business, there's probably something that we provide that is going to help you move to the next level.
Right. Which is sort of correct for any business. There's a ton of business tools out in the world, resources, tools, services, etc., direct and indirect.
Right.
And there's no singular one item that works for every business,
right,
or is no good for any business. And anything in between, right? So it's all about finding those right combinations and fits, business-wise, industry, etc., right?
Yeah. And for us, a majority of the businesses that we serve are under 10 employees. They are considered a small business, and that is our core of our accredited businesses. But we have businesses who are much, much larger, and we're looking at like the OG&Es and the Blue Cross and Blue Shield and the OPEBCOs of Oklahoma. And so when you take those two different, very, very different,
extremely different
types of businesses, that are part of BBB, and you realize that there are things that they all find that BBB helps their business and provides a level of trust and transparency whenever they're communicating that to their donors or consumers or business partners
right.
or creditors. BBB factors into all of those things.
So let's go to the small business end of that spectrum there. What are some common mistakes or things that people who run small businesses should be trying to do better in order to improve their business? Your advice from Kitt at the BBB.
Well, that's kind of scary. I would say the thing that we see businesses struggle with is wearing every single hat.
Sure.
When you are a business owner, typically you're in that business because that is your trade and your profession. Whether you're a plumber, electrician, a doctor, a lawyer, you went into business because you have a very specific skill set that makes you good at that job.
Skills and expertise.
Absolutely.
Right.
And so just because you're a good lawyer does not mean you're a good business owner. And
vice versa. If you're bad at business, doesn't mean you're a bad lawyer.
Right, exactly. And so I think where we see people struggle the most is not having the resources or the relationships to figure out how to best do the other parts of their operations that they need to be successful, whether that's marketing or HR or the financial portion of bookkeeping, accountability, just operational facilities management. Sometimes even here we struggle with, IT, infrastructure, making sure our yard gets cut, that the sprinklers work, that the lights are always on. And so I'm obviously not an electrician. So making sure that I have the people available and at the ready who are going to provide good service to my business is important.
Relationships.
And that's where we see a lot of business owners struggle because they're trying to do all of those things. And that's not their skill set and that's not their zone of genius or the area where they are most successful. And so I would say reaching out, and because it's not a weakness to say, I need help with operations or facilities management or bookkeeping, but outsourcing the things that are going to help them stay successful and realizing that there is a cost associated with that, but it's probably going to cost you less outsourcing that than it is for you to spend your time when you could be seeing clients or customers or patients, whatever it is that you need for your business to stay successful.
I have that conversation a lot with businesses where I say, do you have a CPA? Well, of course we do. If you have a legal issue, do you have a lawyer? Of course we do. And it's like, well, then you can outsource or you can bring in these services for all these other things too that take that speciality like marketing, HR, accounting, etc. And no one ever says, I don't need a CPA. Of course you do.
It's necessary.
Because business owners outside of people who are actually in the financial don't want to file the taxes. They don't want to do that paperwork. It's a ton of paperwork, right? So everyone feels comfortable with hiring a bookkeeper or a CPA first. Well, you could do the same thing with your HR, with your legal, even with recruiting new employees, right? All kinds of aspects of business like that when you break it down to, well, you do this, why not do that, right?
And I think what I have found that's really interesting about all of those different industries is that there's such a variety of levels of availability. So you have, let's just take HR and payroll, for example. You have really large organizations that can help you with that does everything from the HR, the payroll, the onboarding, the recruiting, the 401k management, and you can pay a lot of money for that. Or you can use just a bookkeeper if that's all you need.
Right.
And so, and I'm not saying just a bookkeeper like it's a sideline, but if you need somebody who specializes in one specific
you don't have to be intimidated by that idea of accounting, HR, all of that side of the business, but you can be really specific in what you need, and then as you grow, maybe grow into other things, right?
Absolutely.
So for the last 2.5 years or so, we've been working very specifically on your long-term vision and your strategy.
Right.
So talk a little bit, just give people about a minute as to why vision and strategy before execution is so important that it comes in that order.
Yeah. When I first started at BBB, it was really easy to see the problems, the things that needed to be fixed.
The low-hanging fruit.
That's right. And to be a successful organization and to be a successful nonprofit, because that's what I've always worked in. Here's the things I know we need to fix. And so I could lay out that vision really easily.
Right.
So once we got all of that tackled, it came down to, for us, it was marketing. And what's interesting is my background's in marketing. So it was hard to say, I need help in marketing,
Right.
but I do, and I did. And so that then helped figure out where are the areas that we're really struggling with the cohesion in our marketing and our strategy and what we're trying to accomplish. And we knew our vision. We knew where we wanted to get to. We knew at the end of the day, in a 5-year and a 10-year, that when businesses talked about their accreditation, they could say, I'm in business and I'm a better business because I'm a part of BBB. But we didn't necessarily have the strategy on how to get there. Right. So we had that vision. And so that's been the really great thing about what we've been doing over the last 2 years is putting together that framework of where is this going to lead us? And if we do all of these different steps and we go through these different plans, then is that going to actually achieve the vision that we've set forth for our organization? And for us, I would say that's why it's been so successful, because we didn't expect to do it in 30 days or 60 days. We realized it is a very long-term project, and it's one that's not easy, and it's not without its trials and hardships and tense moments.
And it technically never ends.
It
just gets to a good point where it's very effective and efficient, but it continually goes on.
Right. But whenever we have those moments that are a win, it is so worth it. And so what's been really fun over the past couple of weeks, I've been talking to different people about our marketing strategy and what they have seen at BBB. And when they look at our social media or they look at our articles that we're creating, what do they think about that? And when I hear people talk about, I thought you guys were just about complaints, but it's been really neat to see your articles or your social media that talks about how businesses can be better. In my mind, that's a win.
Right.
And I'm so excited that we've changed one person's perception of what we do and who we are and how we serve.
Right. So one of the things that you do extremely well that a lot of businesses struggle with is corporate culture, the internal culture here. And I know, just knowing you personally, that's important to you, and it a little bit stems off your personality, but it still takes a lot of very specific leadership and a lot of things in place in order. It's easy to say corporate culture. It's very hard to execute. So give people some tips on building a great corporate culture.
I would say I'm very lucky in that I've had really fantastic bosses, and I've had a few really terrible bosses.
I've had some terrible ones. I've had a lot of terrible ones.
And they're both equally important.
Yes.
And realizing the lessons that you learned from them of what to do and what you really appreciated about one versus the other, and the things that maybe that terrible boss did that you're like, if they would just tweak this one thing, it would have been so much better. Because I get the idea behind what they were trying to do. It just didn't work. And so being able to pull from that experience and realizing the lessons learned has been really important. The other thing that I think a lot of people miss out on is their own personality. And how their personality drives the success of the culture of their organization. And my personality is very different than yours. And so how I lead people is probably going to be very different than you. So I need to be very genuine and transparent in how I lead. And my expectations for the individuals that are in this building and how they interact with consumers and business owners, and how they contribute to our culture. My BBB is very different from the BBB in Dallas, and the one in Texas, and the one in Tulsa. And that's not a bad thing. It really is driven by the leadership of the organization. And I think we get really wrapped up in the norms of you're supposed to act like this. Your HR policy is supposed to say this. Well, people can't wear that to the office. That's not the right thing. You can't jump rope in your parking lot at 3 p.m. That's just not okay. And it's like, why not? Who said it's not okay? I don't understand that. And so I think that's part of being genuine to who you as an individual are, and the leadership that you provide, and what people should expect from you. Because if the attire is really important to you, then that dress code is going to be something important that you're going to make sure everybody understands. If flexibility is really important to you and you want to make sure that people understand the parameters of when they can be at work and not at work, or how many hours they have to put in, then that's something that you need to communicate. And if it's not important to you, then don't include it as part of, what people should expect. If you want to have a flexible environment or you don't, then making sure that you are really very, very clear in what people can do and cannot do, and what is frustrating and not frustrating, or when they go out of bounds, and having those conversations up front, not because you're trying to create conflict, but because you're trying to be transparent and you're trying to have an open dialogue so that people understand the pain points of what's acceptable and not acceptable. It's helpful because you're building a relationship. You're not just employing people. You are building a team. You're building a relationship, because I would assume that when you hire somebody, it's so that they stay.
That's the point.
And so you make a good match. And so you want them to be at work, but it's also that you want to work with them. And it's not creating an office of conflict and drama where people are talking about things constantly. It's like, no, this is an open dialogue forum. And if you don't like the way something is run, then tell me. And I can either explain why we do it that way, or if that's not a good fit for you because we have different priorities, then let me help you find a place that it does work.
Right. And that's one of the failures that I think a lot of bosses miss, is they figure if it doesn't work, go on, as opposed to let me find you because you're in a relationship. It's a working relationship, you're friends, but it's a relationship as opposed to just something you just
And when I run into you at the grocery store, I want to be able to say hi to you.
That too, because we're all in the same community together.
And it's small.
Everyone who listens to this show, if you've ever heard this podcast at all, we talk about a lot of things that Kitt just hit on. Authenticity, transparency, flexibility, adaptability, and paying attention to what works and not getting all hung up in why it works, but the fact that it works, as opposed to a structure and a system. We need structure and systems to get us on in the ballpark, but once you're in the ballpark, you have to do what works for you and your environment, right?
Yeah, and common sense.
Common sense.
And common decency is also really
there's
important.
That. Two things we don't have as much of these days, it feels like.
Well, and when talking to people on our team, and when they first come on board, I think that initial conversation about office culture, HR practices, expectations needs to be set by me. And so I have that conversation with every single person.
Accountability.
Because at the end of the day, when they say, Kitt told me I can do this or not do this, nobody else is going to say, she didn't say that, because they've all gotten the exact same message. So it adds a lot of consistency to that messaging. Right.
Creating expectation and then living up to those expectations.
Yeah.
Another, again, core elements of a really well-run business. And that's exactly what BBB of Central Oklahoma is. It's a well-run organization from the top down through very defined and specific strategy, long-term vision, corporate culture, and then paying attention to what it is you do, which is the customer service you provide for your members and the people who associate with BBB. That's the definition of good business right there, folks. So happy to have you on the podcast today, Kitt. And I'll be back next time. Hopefully, Pritch will be back from Europe pretty soon. And we'll get back to our regular program. In the meantime, we've been having these great guests like Kitt on the Neo Marketing Podcast. I'm super happy that you're here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.